Welcome to Something to Talk About. This is Wednesday, the third Wednesday of the month, which means we're going to check in with Ann Lovejoy and discuss gardening with Ann and friends. But I would like to start by thanking Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island for being a sponsor of the Senior Community Center Something to Talk About. They offer independent and assisted living and a vibrant memory care community up on Rolling Bay. They have day stay and respite care programs too. To learn more, call 206-594-1010. Ask for Celia or Jamie, and they'll set you up with a free meal as well as a tour if you're interested. Check out the website at fieldstonecommunities.com. Also, we would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the ancestral homeland of the Suquamish people, the people of the clear salt water, who have been living on these waters of the Salish Sea since time immemorial. We honor them and are learning from their stewardship of these lands and waters. So, yeah, hi, Ann and company.
Hey, Reed.
Thank you for, we had a little bit of a bump today because Zoom had a crazy day, but I'm going to walk in and join you now, and we'll start the conversation.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Zoom was down. That's something that doesn't happen very often, thank goodness. And it's interesting to notice how reliant we've become on some of these things that we never even heard of 5 years ago or 6 or whatever it is now. But this is one I really rather like because we get to have these conversations. People who are out there in the beautiful sunshine actually doing some gardening can check in with us later, right?
Yes.
And I would always like to say, if you have questions and you know you can't be here, you can email them to me or email them to Reed, and then we can deal with them at this time, right, on the third Wednesday of each month. I do have a few questions lined up, but I think Edie, you have some questions too, right?
I do. I have 3 questions.
Okay.
Soup?
Yeah.
So I got mulch last year from Tilts. And it was different than the mulch I got from Tilts the year before. They have 3 different grades. And the grade of the mulch that I got the first time from them was very much compost. And it was making my perennials and my annuals very happy. And then I was also making the weeds very, very happy. So last year I got a different quality of mulch, less expensive, and it had, unfortunately, a lot of bark and twigs and a lot of wood in it. And it really was very good at suppressing weeds, but not nurturing the plants that you want growing. So I'm trying to decide this year, now I've got all this layer of mulch, which has got a lot of wood in it. Can I just get the nice fluffy compost and put it over that?
Yes, you certainly can. We do that in a lot of gardens, layering. It's kind of the sandwich style. And often I'll do a 2-pronged mulch, which is putting on compost first, which is, as you say, much more nutritive, and it's going to feed a lot of plants, including those weeds. And then you can also put on a layer, as we do here at the center, of coarse wood chips or medium coarse. I mean, there's really, really coarse stuff that they call hog fuel, which has like small logs in it practically. That's great if you have a huge estate and you're trying to like really make a big path in the woods or something like that. Or if there's a very, very weedy patch and you can actually get a truck to come in and dump 10 yards of it right there and rake it out. And this deep, you'll smother ivy. I mean, that stuff's really powerful for what it does, but it's not a good one for your perennials or your vegetables, right? So you're right that you want to select the right approach for the plants you have. So if you did a layer of compost, you did a layer of the woody product, now you can do another layer of compost and just put that on top. But you could also think about, depending on where you are, getting another, even a smaller amount of not bark as such, but wood chips. And you can get medium or fine grind or a mix of the two. And sometimes you can get that bagged, or you can get a delivery of a small amount, like 3 yards or something like that. And it does a couple things. It locks in moisture to the soil. It protects soil from wind and sunshine. Should we get a hot summer, which who knows, we might. It really helps protect the plant roots and keep them a little more moist. So, and as you say, it's a good suppressor of many weeds as well, because a lot of weeds need light to germinate. They're called the weeds of disturbance, and they may be underground for years, and then you decide you're going to plant something there and you dig it up and boom, you've just waked up an entire colony of shotweed or something like that, right? Which you start to say, that wasn't here before. What happened?
Well, And then I couldn't really, the idea that I was going to rake up all the woody stuff that's left from last year would
No.
be very labor intensive.
No, you don't need to.
So I
do
can
that at
just
all.
have them bring me the better quality
Yeah.
mulch this year and I'll put it on.
I mean, think of the forest, like when you walk through the Grand Forest, you'll see that essentially the same thing happens when in the fall you get a big lot of leaves coming down. And all through the rest of the year, you get a variety of needles and chips and bark and twigs and all that kind of stuff. And then you get another load of leaves. And that sandwich layer creates some of the best soil on the planet. So,
That's
yeah,
very helpful.
way to go.
And it's okay, maybe at the end of the year, if she wanted to put denser stuff on during the winter.
Yeah, or before the winter, really, because one of the things that happens if we get our rainy years, which sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, but all that beautiful fluffy stuff can get washed away. So putting it on at the end of the summer as the rainy season approaches, and that will actually keep it from getting washed away as well.
Maybe I don't need as many yards as if it were the only mulch I was using and I've got some remaining of the other one. So instead of 6 yards, I could get 5 yards.
Or 3 or whatever, sure.
So they don't have to put it on as thick.
Yeah,
That's very helpful.
yeah.
And what about the nitrogen that's in wood?
So, okay, here's the deal. When wood chips break down, they use nitrogen from the soil to break down. But once they've broken down, there they all are. And the nitrogen is still there and it's going right back. So what you sometimes see with bark especially is the worst offender. You'll see big shrub planted with a big thick layer of bark around it and the leaves start turning yellow and it's choking because bark sheds water. That's what it's designed to do, right? I mean, that's when it's on the tree, that's what it's doing, is it's keeping that core vascular system intact. So when it's piled on around shrubs, it is essentially cutting off light and air and water. And it also is, as it's breaking down, definitely is taking nitrogen out of the soil, and that yellowing you see. And sometimes it also makes them, the roots are trying so hard to compensate that they're using a lot of minerals out of that soil too. So there's something called chelated iron that you can put on when plants are very yellowy, and it helps restore that balance for them too. Also, I like to use, when you rake away the bark that's making the problem, right? I like to use kelp meal as part of the nutritive feed because it's got so many cool minerals in it, right? That it's like an all-purpose vitamin for your plants, right? Vitamin and minerals. And it's not very expensive. Either you can get liquid, which I often do because I make this elixir with different kinds of nutrients, right? But yeah, kelp meal, kelp liquid, kelp powder, those are all really good things to put on.
As you're talking about this, the houseplants, does this apply to houseplants as well? Like to actually not, we don't say put compost, but put some kind of mulchy material around the top of the pot?
Yeah, you
soil?
can use compost on plants, indoor plants for sure.
Okay.
I mean, not hot compost,
Mhm.
because it's, that's
Yeah,
gonna be a degrader, right? But compost, and of course, anything in a pot is a captive audience and it has only very limited resources and it relies on you. A lot of the fertilizers are water soluble, so the more you water your plant, the more they get diluted and washed out.
Mhm.
So putting down compost is kind of a slow food approach.
Okay.
And every time you water, you're going to release a little more nutrient. I also like to use the Dr. Earth indoor houseplant fertilizers, which
Okay.
you can use kind of half strength. I usually say anything indoors, use half strength just because you're not trying to stimulate a huge amount of growth. You just want them to kind of putter along, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that's always a good way to do it. The other thing you can do, which is kind of interesting, is like if you do teapot and you've got a lot of spent tea leaves, that makes a good mulch too.
Huh. I think I tried coffee grounds and that seemed to be a little too intense for some of my.
It's pretty high in nitrogen. It's like 911. So yeah, it's a lot. But outdoors, I'll tell you what it's great for. Coffee grounds, used coffee grounds, are on tomato plants. It's fantastic because it helps them suppress early blight. And also when the slugs cross it, they get dried out. Because that big whole slime body of theirs is like very absorptive, right? And so it crawls across the coffee grounds, and coffee is a diuretic, right? So they shrivel up and you get these cool little dried up slugs, which I used to like spray paint them gold and make earrings for all my friends and stuff because they're cute, but they're only that cute. But the thing is, that's a good, it does 2 or 3 beneficial things. It gives nitrogen. It prevents some of the blights that we often see. Feeds the plants and really deters slugs, which is awesome. Tomato plants also very beneficial for tomatoes once they've started to set flower. Before that, you run the risk of too much nitrogen before they start really flowering and setting fruit, and you run the risk of just promoting a ton of leaves. But once they get hormonally set to start doing the flower and fruit thing, then you're going to be getting what you want, right? Does that make sense?
It does.
What about coffee grounds on roses? I thought someone
Yeah,
told me that.
That works too, because roses are kind of greedy pigs. They like high everything and they like a lot of space. And so, yeah, coffee grounds are good. Also, they like kelp, that kelp meal. And when you're feeding plants like that, remember that they don't eat from their neck. They actually eat from their feeder roots, which are about where the drip line would be before you pruned it. Right? You always have to remember, I just cut that plant in half, but it
Yeah.
was this big. So
That's where the
feeder
roots are.
are actually further away than you might think. And that's where the fertilizers like Dr. Earth dry, scratchy stuff that looks like something you would feed a donkey, but you just spread it out, scratch it really lightly. You don't have to dig it in. And every time it rains or it gets watered, it will slow deliver some of those nutrients right where you want them. But yeah.
So I have two, speaking of mulches, I have 2 areas. One has a vine maple with a huge old evergreen towering over it. And the other area has 3 comet evergreens that Junko sold us like 18 years ago. And both of those areas where the comets are and where the vine maple is, they get huge layers of evergreen needles. And a rumor had it that it's okay to leave
Of
those.
course. I mean, that's the
Because
plant's own food.
A natural mulch.
I mean, what a plant sheds is full of nutrients the plant needs.
Needles?
Yeah, absolutely. For needled plants, yes, right? And those needles generally last somewhere between 2 to 4 years before they fall off. But they're still full of nutrients, they're stored. So they're designed to give back, right? And when we tidy up and put something else there, it's just not working with. And again, if you don't like the look of it, you can put compost on top, just to thin
I don't
layer.
mind the way it looks. I just tell them that I don't want any compost in those areas because I've already got a bed of needles that are very
They're
thick.
doing different things. And if the plants look super stressed,
I see.
which they could be, because so often, all their neighbors are gone, right? And they're kind of solo out there. They don't have the benefit of root connection with other trees of their type. Then they become more at risk and may not do so well. And also they may have been damaged during construction.
You could put some of the regular compost over the needles.
And yeah, one thing to think about with trees like that, like it takes maybe 15, 20 years for some of that damage to show up. And people are always amazed, like, wait, it's been fine. It's been happy. It's like, well, yeah, but they dug the whole septic system right there, right? And cut through all those roots and did all that damage. And then they piled new soil up to here. And, trees shouldn't be planted so it looks like a straw's coming up. They should be planted with a bit of shoulder. So does that make sense? And if they're not, sometimes you can get some of that away from the trunk and it can breathe better and then it actually will survive longer. Because you can smother a tree, it just takes a while.
Or even if you have the bark or the compost too close, doesn't it even make it like insects start?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, all
It's a
kinds of
juicy,
problems,
juicy
yeah.
burrow, yeah. So, I mean, you never feed the neck. You always feed the exploring roots, right? I wanted to tell a little story about daffodils because this is something that I know a lot of you know that if you drive around the island for many years, you'd see roadsides lined with daffodils, usually smaller roads. And it started around Ellingston and over on that side of the island. And it was because the Crutch family lived on Ellingston Road. And Dick Crutch learned that there was an old cabin in the woods that had fallen in, but it was surrounded by daffodil bulbs still in around the frame of the old house, right? And a neighbor and I went and dug a bunch of those and took them to the Historic Society. And we learned it had been the cabin of Mary Sam, who was a Suquamish midwife, who came to Bainbridge and taught a lot of pioneer women how to dry fish, how to dry berries, which ones were good to eat, what to do with how to cook salmon without, frying it. There's like She was very helpful and she liked plants. And so she took a lot of plants as payment. So Dick Crutch's family decided to start planting bulbs in memory of her. And I think they used to do 5,000 a year and pretty soon tapped me for finding people to plant them, which that was a pretty good idea, actually. So we got sports teams and scouts and schools and all kinds of people planting them. And we did that for quite a long time. And then when the roundabout at High School Road was put in, the first roundabout on the island, somebody had started writing to the paper and saying, who put these invasive, non-native trash weed daffodils all over the island? It's a disgrace. And Junko got really mad. And he said, how many daffodils do we still have left? And I went out and counted and I was like, a couple thousand. He's like, put them all in the roundabout. So the Friday Tidy at the library, we took a day and we planted the roundabout. And if you recall, for many years, there was a big round 6 or 7 bulbs deep of daffodils in there. Over the years, some of them got moved for different crises with the water system and all that, but they were still there until very recently. And I had no sooner updated this article about the daffodils because people were starting to ask again, then they took all the plants out of the roundabout, including all but one daffodil bulb. So I was driving back and I just put that newspaper article in about how cool it is that that roundabout is still full of bulbs that Junko had contributed. And there were 1 daffodil and 7 pink flamingos. And it's planted now with low plants. At the time we planted it back when, the traffic calming measure best practices was to plant tall, high things that would obscure the vision because people would certainly drive more carefully and slowly if they couldn't see. As it happened, that was not true. So
I can't see, it must not be there.
I didn't see it at all. Right, so now there's like low growing, it's
Yes.
pretty much native stuff, but there it doesn't look like a lot's happening because it's same
It's early.
as the mulch, but something will. But I decided it would be really fun to replant the daffodils. So I was putting in my next follow-up article, which will run in a couple of weeks, I guess. If anyone has pots of daffodils around and they're spent and they're kind of floppy, don't throw them out. Bring them to the library and the Friday Tidies will wait till they're really dormant and then we'll stealth plant them back around the, right? But in the
So
meantime.
you didn't hear it here first.
No, you know nothing. In the meantime, I said, I sure wish I knew who was planting daffodils again, because I've noticed a lot of places there were daffodils being planted along the roads, like a lot of them,
Like 305.
Yeah.
Line.
all over the place. And so I got a letter from Matt Albee, who was until very recently the owner of 11 Winery. He was the founder of that winery on the island. And he said, oh, it's me and my friends. We planted them and 11 Winery donated all of those bulbs. And they did the smile too.
Oh,
You know, that great big
yes,
smile.
yes.
Oh,
That was
yeah, I
11 Winery did that, which I thought was
Oh.
amazing. And he
Yeah.
recently sold to his A-team employees and he and his wife moved to BC. But he said he still comes down to plant the daffodil. He's going to come every year and plant more daffodils until
Oh.
Bainbridge is completely daffodiled. Isn't that just a great story, Rue?
Yeah.
I
that's
love that.
wonderful.
There's somebody with an idea and just taking it and
It's
running.
been so fun to just drive down 305 and then trying to guess, now who planted all these? So now we know the story.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, in this new chapter I wasn't aware of. I just
just
thought that
found out.
somehow this was a good year for daffodils. And I also wondered about how much daffodils spread. Not
very
at all.
little. Now, daffodil bulbs will, what's called pupping. And they'll actually do little offset bulbs and they'll spread into small clusters, but they don't, except under really ideal conditions, they don't naturalize super freely. They will over time. And I know of older gardens that have like a lot of older daffodils. The old farmhouse we first bought on Madison up by Wilkes had large clusters of those poets narcissus, the white ones, and some of the old King Alfred type daffodils, which is
Oh, the
most of
big
what's been
yellow.
planted. Because those are very persistent.
Mm.
They're kind of rock steady and they may not proliferate that much, but they are going to stay. As long as nobody removes all the foliage.
And dirt, yes.
Well, that's the other thing, that if you're a tidy gardener and you think that the foliage looks terrible as it plops, a lot of people cut it off. Well, remember that we were just saying, all the nutrients in that dying leaf are made, right now, they're going back and back into the bulb to be stored as the leaves brown off. That's where they're going. And if you take the leaves off too soon, then they're going to dwindle. The bulbs will dwindle or fail to bloom or just kind of pile on. So when you have that kind of situation in the garden and you don't want to look at a lot of floppy foliage, you don't take it off and you don't braid it, but you can just gently fold it over and you can throw it.
I did that. What did
It
you
took
do?
a long time.
No braiding.
Martha's,
No braiding, but you
used to tell
Say
people
take
to
the,
braid
take the
it.
leftover branch.
Because it looks more tidy if you braid them.
But it's that
wood
in
chips so
a,
good.
at, with Kew Gardens, that's where I saw it, and I thought, oh, that looks so cool.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't really actually speed the work of the plant,
No.
right? So you can just gently push, let them, as they go down, put a handful of compost on top and plant something else in front. Because you think about succession planting, I usually put bulbs to the back of a border so that they can do their thing. And then as they're fading, I'll have other kinds of perennial things popping up in front that will mask that dying foliage without crowding or being too territorial. Because they like to dry off in the summer too. And so if they're in a border that's irrigated, you'll notice your bulbs will dwindle and even rot. And in my case, the bulbs will be gone, but you'll have a nice crop of peanuts because the squirrels will dig out the bulbs and take them and plant your peanuts instead. But tulip bulbs are actually fairly toxic, so they don't usually take those, but the daffodils, sometimes they will. And deer don't eat daffodils, is the other piece, whereas they
Yeah.
love tulips,
Mhm.
right? But if you're thinking about aftercare for your bulbs, how to make them happy and how to make them more persistent, make sure they don't get irrigated in the summer, let them die naturally and gracefully, throw a little compost on them. You can even, as long as there's green in that, in their foliage, clear off the whatever mulch you have, put some of that Dr. Earth down and let them be having some nourishment on their way out. And that will help a lot to keep them more perpetual, right? And there are kinds of tulips that are much more persistent than others. And the big, beautiful border beauties, pretty much not. But the Darwin single earlies, which is a very old English strain, those are absolutely rock steady and they will proliferate over time. You get quite a good clump.
Is that the same? We used to call them the historic tulips.
Maybe, because,
Is that
yes,
the term?
because I had a friend with a big nursery that specialized in plants for historic recreation houses and stuff. And so having plants appropriate to the style of the architecture for a historic renovation of a house or a
Oh, wow.
building, they want to have the right plants. It's really actually very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, if you're a geeky nerd like me, right? But yeah, and finding plants that will last, it sort of depends on where you are, right? What happens? We're here in this, Pacific Northwest. We've always sort of had what's called the modified Mediterranean climate, which means wetter winter, drier summer, which helps the bulbs dry out, which helps them stick around a little bit longer.
Mhm.
So that whole thing, right? Using natural cycle.
I've often saved amaryllis bulbs from year to year, but this time something happened where it sent off two lovely, beautiful shoots of flowers and then never grew any leaves.
Was it planted in soil?
No, it was in a pot, so in soil. Mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Was it one that you had saved?
From a previous year.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
it probably didn't get fed because it needs at least 5 healthy leaves to produce a flower stem,
Okay.
an amaryllis. So when you're growing them on, one thing to remember is they like a big shallow bowl, wide shallow bowl rather than a deep one.
Okay.
And they want to have some of their upper bulbs should be exposed.
Mhm.
And so when you plant them like that, they'll pop like crazy and you can get clumps of like 7 or 8 blooming stems in a wide shallow bowl, which is pretty fun. Still
Yeah.
needs drainage,
Okay.
but not as much. And what you want to think about is like grow them like a house plant. So after they've bloomed, they're tired.
Mhm.
So give them some fertilizer every month, right?
Okay.
Wash those leaves off if they start to get dusty. Just saying, in
Yeah.
my house they do, right?
At best, they might get in the shower. Yeah.
Right? But, it's like caring for them like a houseplant and then they'll be, because in their natural environment, they go dormant in the hot, dry summer and then come back awake in the rainy season. But here we can grow them as if they were perennial houseplants
Okay.
and, right? And they don't necessarily need a drying off period to bloom.
Okay. Okay. I'll try that now.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
And
Thank
who
you.
else?
Did you have another question?
I do.
Okay.
I'm interested though in this, what you said about the needles on the comets and on the other area, that they actually have nutrients in them and they could put a dusting, but it is a wonderful mulch as well.
Yeah,
But I have a very big pot, one of those deck pots. And I just bought some more Calabrichia to put in them this year. But when I took out the ones that had died over the winter, there were 5 in the pot, and I took out each one and took the root balls out. And yet that entire, about that deep, the roots have all gone down and I'm wondering, should I take out all of that?
That's
And
soil
put
is,
new soil because it's actually laced with a lot of roots in it.
yeah, because it's already done its job. And potting soil by nature, there's no way to restore it. It doesn't have a lot of biota living things in there doing the work for you. And so it becomes almost a dead or static medium, and you have to empty it out. And I always put it in my compost, break it up and mix it into the compost, and that gives you a better quality than, banana peels and eggshells. You got to balance it with something.
Then you add in new compost.
Yeah.
new pots.
Well, a new potting soil, and always crock the bottom of the pot. And if it's really deep, sometimes I'll mix some activated charcoal in the bottom of it to keep it from getting anaerobic, because that can happen in really big pots with a lot of stuff in it.
Well, the pot stands about this high. And last year I was a glutton for punishment and I emptied the entire bloody pot. And in the bottom, I have small rocks so that it will drain properly. But I am not doing that this year. I'm not going to empty the entire pot. I'll just take out the first foot or so where I'm going to put the new plants in, because it's a big job
It
to
is a big job, but you will not get the same result that you would if you actually replace the soil.
the entire pot,
Yeah,
which is,
but here's the sustainable way to do that. Cause it to be done by others. Yes, it's all in the wrist. Honey, take everything out of that, then clean it off, scrub it up a little bit, and let's crock the bottom with some nice big, I like the pots that blew up in the winter. I use big jagged pieces like that because
Yeah.
it protects the drain holes, don't you think?
Yeah.
And put that in the bottom, and then you can start backfilling. And you don't have to put the really good stuff in the bottom. It's like when you're having a big party and you serve the good stuff first, and then as the night wears on, you get down to the Mogan David. That could be at the bottom of the pot, right?
Right.
And the really good stuff in that top 18 inches.
okay, well, I'll do 18 inches,
Yeah.
maybe, but I'll tell you, going all the way to the bottom and then taking all the rocks out
Yeah.
last year, and then cleaning the whole pot, and then filling life is short.
Well, it will give you a lot better result if you do it, but if you don't do it, it will still, they'll be like, okay, but they'll be as if they don't have the same depth of soil.
Well, and when I was at Bainbridge Gardens the other day, they had literally 5 of the Calabrichia in the purple, darker than your shirt. And that's all they had was 5 left, and that's exactly what I needed.
Perfect.
Purple with an orange pot.
Great.
That's lovely.
That's your kind of thing. But Rita, you were saying your hardy fuchsia came back, right?
It's coming back. I was surprised, and it's coming back just lovely. And so we'll just see how that goes, because it was pretty cold and it's on my deck and I'm kind of protected, but I didn't do any cutting until last week when I saw all the new stuff, because but I'm getting better about, not cutting stuff back until middle of April. Probably
Well,
better in days.
It's not even a date. It's like when something's happening, you
Happening.
can tell how it's doing.
Exactly. So that's coming back, and I've got some little mini hostas, I think, that I've had in this pot for a couple of years, and I moved it around, and and I just leave it out and they're coming up again. And it is just amazing to me to see those, because I thought, especially it was pretty cold this winter.
Yeah.
But I was just going to say, I'm in the Holly neighborhood where the sewer treatment plant is.
Right.
This is the first time in probably 10 years that a parsley plant near my front door made it through the entire winter, and it's really happy.
Oh,
And usually they die over the winter, and it's parsley. It's not a
Yeah.
perennial. Normally,
Yes.
it's an annual, and this
It's a perennial.
is really.
Parsley's perennial.
Yeah.
I think we just think that when summer's over, we
It's always died over.
Or at least,
winter.
I thought it was a
it'll-
biennial.
well,
No, it's
they-
perennial.
I've had them last 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
And part of it is if you don't let them go to seed and flower, They last a lot longer.
Yeah, that makes
But yeah,
sense.
so, but if you do let them go to seed, you will have parsley for the rest of your life. So there's-
Depends on how long my life is.
But last year when we lost so many fuchsias because of that, last year the freeze was different in that it was 5 days, 5 nights and 5 days. And usually what will happen is we'll get 5 nights of freeze, maybe or 10 even. But in the day, the temperatures will come up over freezing. But that did not happen. And that is why we lost so much more last year than this year. But I just noticed I was out putting some fertilizer, some Dr. Earth fertilizer around our dahlias.
Oh,
And the
yes.
slugs have been eating them and they're all slime trailed. So I cleaned it all off and put the fertilizer down and I put a lot more bark around it.
I noticed that because I just looked at them and I thought, I wonder if we should get some more tubers to add to what we've got.
I did lose some dahlias in pots.
Okay,
If the small pots, they froze. But the ones in the ground came back, but the slugs are perfectly happy to go eat them. So you have to kind of watch out for that. Like a plant that you think maybe didn't come back, look and see if there's a slime trail around it. Because if there is, you might just be able to put some, and baiting with something like Sluggo, which is bran, and with just iron oxide in it, which is not going to hurt anything unless you're a mollusk, right?
right.
So wandering clams, slugs, whatever, it will take them out, but it won't hurt the birds,
Right,
which I think is really important.
yeah. Or you can take a little container of beer and put it in. And in about 2 hours, your little container will be full of slugs. It
And
is,
you know what's hilarious? They did thing at organic gardening and tried different kinds of beer. And the favorite was Poly Girl Dark. St. Poly Girl.
oh, really?
It's just like from Wisconsin, right? St. Poly Girl Dark Beer. Boom, that was it.
Yeah.
It's the cheapest beer in around too, so.
It's the funniest thing because I just did it one year just to see and I could not believe. And I'm going, wait, I don't want all the slugs out of the forest in the back here. We want the forest back there.
It's like feeding the raccoons. Watch
Yeah.
out, here they come, the
Yeah.
slugs.
I mean, because I heard about that, but I could not believe it, how many got in there and then
But they die happy, right?
they do. die happy. Yes, they do.
What about I'm trying to think of the name of it right now, the white powder you could put down. What is that?
By diatomaceous earth, maybe?
Yeah,
Okay, so diatoms are these little teeny sea dwellers that died probably a million years ago, really. And so it can be mined out of places that used to be ocean bottom and aren't anymore, if that makes sense. And that's why they're powdery, right? But they're still super sharp. They're like edges are like glass to a teeny creature. So if you put them around lettuce or lilies or some of these other targets that slugs really love, then they will crawl over that. The slugs crawl across, and again, it slices up their little bodies, which they don't die happy, but they do die.
it doesn't look good though in your garden. I've
Well-
used it and it's just,
Oh,
you know,
It's only a short time.
yeah.
You know, by May, that's the thing. If you have ornamental beds, by May, you shouldn't be able to see the soil anymore. Everything should just barely touch. And you just have this social connection. It's like you don't want to overlap too much that there's, poor air circulation and you start getting molds and mildews. But you want them to just touch each other, which means no bare earth. Because that is the best protection you have against weeds. I was going to actually talk a little about what kind of gardener are you? Because there's so many questions I've had lately. It made me realize, like, if you are a very you give careful attention, you pay a lot of attention, you're in the garden a lot, you're really, really watching, you're going to have such perfect vegetables, right? Because the annuals absolutely need you and they need your attention all the time. And if you take a week off and forget them, they don't come back. They can't recover they don't have resources. Like if you're kind of a slapdash in and out of the garden, you're traveling a lot, you might want to look at perennials because once
Yeah.
they're in, they're usually fairly tough and they don't need as much help. And if they're going to die, they're going to die whether you're there or not. But, it's like thinking about what you actually have to give before you set yourself up for disappointment. Because I just had like 4 in a row, people saying, I keep planting my vegetables and then they die. And I was like, well, what happened? Well, it could have been because I was gone for 3 weeks. Yes, it could, right? Or whatever. It's like, you have to kind of figure out be honest, what do I actually have to offer? And then find focus on the plants that can thrive with the kind of benign neglect you have to offer. Or the kind of extreme attention. I have a friend who weeds with tweezers.
Okay,
You know, the Japanese garden at the library with all those paving stones?
that's why.
Sharon Kitamoto is out there with tweezers. And she said, well, the grass would grow if I don't do this. I'm like, go for it, honey. But I mean, not everybody's gonna do that, but if you're that person, it's fabulous, right?
Right.
My solution is usually to take pieces of oregano and put it in the cracks.
Yes.
And then you have, the cracks are full of wonderful herbs, right? And they can just creep and crawl and it will be just.
You don't need to eat them.
You're not right.
My husband accused me of taking out almost as many plants as I put in. And I'm about to take some coral bells out and put in some dwarf nandina instead, because those leaves are beautiful on the plants, the four of them. But then they send out the stem with a little white flower and that droops and that could, so they're all coming out.
Oh, bring them here, Avie. We'll put them in the back, right?
Oh, yes.
Four of them.
Yeah, well-
I think.
Yes.
I have another thing I have to go to, but you guys continue. Thank
Okay,
you.
and then
Thank
will it
you.
close itself off or do we?
Just come and tell me.
All right,
Okay.
Thank you.
thank
Actually, I
you.
have a neighbor who's actually going to claim them, I think. She's been actually.
Oh, okay.
If they're already signed out, go for
Keep in
it.
mind, though, that you have places where you could put some things.
Here in the back where it used, originally this was planted, I think in 1985, didn't we figure out, by master gardeners? And it's like, this was the Mediterranean section. Well, now it's in shade almost all day. So, but you know, back in the day, that was
Right.
40 some years ago, it was sunny. But in there are tags that say the different climate zones. Well, that's not what it is anymore. So as our gardens change, we have to kind of be awake to what conditions can we offer?
Well, the condition I've got is that there's more and more deer in the Holly neighborhood.
Oh.
And actually, I have some phlox. If you would like some phlox,
We can do.
I've got two phlox plants that I would love to get rid of because last year, every time they got a flower, the deer came in and ate the flowers. And what's the point? You know, they're pruning them every time they flower.
Right.
And they're sort of a magenta pink, which is not my favorite color. I'd be happy to donate them.
Great, we'd love to have-
Like to come and dig them out, or I can,
We'll dig them out.
We have
you're welcome.
We have death shovels that are amazing. They're called the Root Slayer. And they are heavy and they have this jagged edge. And so you step on it and it has little step things for your foot and you just put it down and it goes right through gravel. It goes right through everything. It's amazing.
I would love, you know, I don't like to ever destroy a plant,
Right.
but I do like to gift them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and sometimes you just go, oh, I can't do this anymore.
I'll give you my phone number.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay,
Rita, Anita, you had some questions about sweetgrass.
I was just gonna ask, yes, try that out. Well, my sweetgrass has just been going great guns but I'm such a newbie at this. So, it's I think it's blossoming now.
Mhm, should be.
So, what should I be doing? It didn't blossom, of course. It grew great guns last fall or whatever. And I even picked some or cut some and braided and stuff. But now, what should I do with the blossoms? Just like, I think they get pretty seeds. I saw a basket.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah,
So the seeds it's very hard to grow from seeds.
okay.
And the seeds have to be dried in perfect conditions, and then they have to be sown immediately when they're actually ripe, which is hard to tell. It's much, much easier to do propagate from starts. And as you're seeing, it starts to run around
Yeah,
and bring up little tufts here and there. And one of the things I do is like, I'll follow a runner and pull it and it will have it, this much. Well, I'll put it in a 4-inch pot, but I'll coil that root and tuck it in so that, it's planted at the right height for itself. And over the next 6 months, it will put out all kinds of roots. And then you'll have a 4-inch pot full of, that's well rooted and ready to go. And that's a good gift plant for somebody, right? But it will, it will fill in a pot really easily, which is great. Like for me, that's what I want. So
Mhm.
I have it pretty well running, but you divide them. If you're going to divide the bigger, thicker clumps, which you probably don't have yet, right?
I bet I do, because it's a 4x4, little 4x4 pea patch. It's pretty much full of wheatgrass.
It would be, right?
Yeah.
So to give room for it,
know.
you can go, like with any overgrown thing like that, where it's full of ground cover or it's full of a single kind of plant, you don't just take the edges, go in and you take like a few plugs here and there
Okay.
so that you make some openings and then you put
Pretty
in
sure
fresh
that's-
soil or fresh compost in those And details. That's how you can renew a ground cover copy, a ground cover blanket, right?
Okay. Mhm.
So, and when you take those cores out, those things is what you can pot up and you can follow the roots and
Share
pull them.
with us.
But then when you replenish the holes they came out of, that gives it the whole big plant another boost. Also, you can feed, again, some of that, like Dr. Earth, just the general purpose, like
Mhm.
555 or something like that. Pretty mild. You don't want to give it a bunch. But it's supposed to be the best time to actually divide those bigger clumps, if you want to do that, is in June to like mid-June. And depending on the year, it was a kind of a cold spring, so we're a little bit behind. But I'd say probably mid to late June is probably your best window.
Okay,
And then I keep them potted up until like fall, and then they can be planted out.
okay, great,
Yeah.
thank you.
I have a question about weeds. So, I moved into one of the Erickson cottages and she didn't live there for a long time. She came in the summer, but I don't think she did much gardening anymore, but the whole back strip behind the cottage is about this wide and it's probably about this long.
Right.
And it's filled with those, I don't remember the name of them, those little, not little, because they're getting pretty big. They're those weeds that when you pick them up, they just pop seeds all over.
Shotweed,
What's it called?
shotweed, or
Yeah.
sometimes it's called jumping Jesus. Because you pull it and it gets in your eye and you go, Jesus, right?
Well, I've never had that happen.
It will. If you weed back there, it will happen. I guarantee you. You want to wear gloves in there. I mean,
So what do I do? I mean, I pulled out a bunch yesterday, but the seeds were popping.
of course, and so the seeds are everywhere. But
Yeah.
remember in the beginning, we were talking about seeds of disturbance. And so those are classic seeds of disturbance. So if you can weed as much as you can and put that in the green waste, that's okay, because it'll go to a high temp. And then put a big smother mulch back there. So, and one of the things I did in my place was I used the burlap bags from one of the coffee roasters.
Oh, okay. I was thinking of just putting down some tarp.
Well, that's gonna kill the
'Cause it'll get
soil.
hot. Yeah, oh,
Right.
okay.
And you don't want to do that. But if you put down a burlap sack, it will eventually rot. But they're about the right width, for a lot, and just run that and then put compost on top of that and then wood chips on top of that. And that blanket should take out just about anything
And how long do I need to leave it there?
forever. And I mean, as
Oh,
long
and I
as,
just plant on top of it?
well, what are you gonna plant in a space that's only, is what, it's about like as wide as.
Well, it's about this wide. I might could plant a line of shrubs or something.
But against what? Against a fence?
A fence, yeah.
So why? I mean, you have to think about what kind of life is that shrub gonna have? Who's gonna see it? What is it gonna do back
Oh,
there?
that's true.
And so you might do better to do some storage back there. Or, put hangers on the fence and have some fun art, garden art, pavers, and maybe some big pots with some shade plants in it. But I wouldn't plant, it's like thinking about spaces like that, they're really hard to maintain. Plants are usually in a space like that, that's where you're gonna get molds and mildews and pollen buildup. And a lot,
It gets quite a bit of sun, I think, in the morning.
yeah.
It's not completely shady, but
But if you put like a trough in there, you wouldn't be able to walk through. So, but you could have a few pots, big pots. And that might be fun. If the fence is sturdy enough, you could even have some, pots coming off, like hanging on the fence. And grow lettuce,
Good idea.
things like that. back
the only thing I'm worried about, because I moved from Portland where I had everything dripped. And I don't have that here. So I'm worried about, how to keep everything watered. I haven't had to do that in so long.
It's a pain in the butt is what
Yeah,
it is.
I know.
Well, and that's another reason
Because
for
the
not,
water rates are high.
right, not trying to plant stuff where you don't need them and where they can't thrive. Then don't set yourself up. Like,
Yeah.
just take that out of the action and say, that's not really a plant zone anymore. It would be a good place for some other kinds of things, but you can have a drip system set up. You can also make sure that your hose gets where you need it to get. Like if you need sometimes 100-foot hose, you only have one tap, I think, on the side of your house, don't you?
There's
Or do you have two? Okay, so figure out,
And she does have some soaker hoses in there, but I don't know if it's all.
unlikely, soaker hose that's been abandoned over time usually gets full of creepy crawlers.
Those.
Yeah, and so it may or may not be still functional, but you could run a test and see, like
Yeah.
turn it on pretty high and see, you should be able to tell pretty soon if it's actually delivering water. And soaker hoses pretty much just give it down. They don't spread unless you put compost or mulch over the top. Then you get kind of more like a carrot, but it's still gonna taper and go down. So they don't spread the water around as much as all that. So depending on what you're trying to grow, and anything that's in there and established is not gonna need a ton of water because it's already made it through a bunch of years, right?
Mhm.
But if you're trying to replant some new things, you're
Yeah.
gonna have to really think about
It's just
that.
all weeds now.
Yeah.
Take that soil with all the roots in it and distribute it in the yard? Is it going to cause a problem?
Wait,
The soil in the pot that had all the roots.
oh, your pot.
Yeah, I was
No.
thinking because she was talking about,
Yeah, no, because you're talking about the roots that are at the bottom of the pot, right?
they were where I pulled the plants out.
Yeah, so those are not the kind of roots that are gonna build a whole new life for themselves.
No, but I could spread it because
Yes.
the soil is still pretty.
You could, yeah.
I'm going to have to catch BI bus. unless-
Well, I think we're just about at our time, but thanks everybody for showing up.
Thank you very much.
And
Thank
thank
you,
you
Ann.
Zoom for coming back on and,
Yes,
Yes.
right?
and I'll give you a call in a couple days, Edie. We'll set
Whenever
up
it
a day.
works for you.
Okay, thank you so much. Well,
We do anything
figure out where we're gonna
with
put 'em
flowers
here,
on the
and I'll get it
sweetgrass?
ready in there.
No,
Yeah,
just leave
There
it.
you
Leave
go.
them, yeah.
Thank you so
Really
very
pretty.
much.
But I'm
Yeah,
going
I
to
thought
still
so.
have another
I
life.
thought it
Yeah.
was Something in Suquamish, an elder.
I must leave without me though.
Pieces on display at Avon. And they were flat, you know, it was the start of a basket, but it was flat
Uh-huh.
and the way it was displayed. And it had the seed pods at the top.
Oh,
I thought it
woven in.
was so beautiful.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah.
I gave a bunch of plants to the Suquamish basket people last year. And told them I have some more and they're like, whoa, wait till June or July. We're really busy. So, but
Yeah.
that's kind of a fun way to pass it on. But yeah,
Yes.
got-
Did you ever get to give those vests?
no, because she hasn't come back. I haven't seen her.
Okay, I saw you see the granddaughter once in a while. She gave the introduction at the memorial, at the Japanese memorial.
Cool.
Yeah, and I assumed it was her mother with her. But I forget the granddaughter's name. I was introduced to her, Ellie. She was at the museum for a while as an intern.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
No, sorry, I should give it back to you and you could just take them to her sometime. I'll give you her contact information. You can reach out.
Okay, yeah, when I get back,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
No,
But,
I have a question for you. Is there any plant?
wait, can I finish this?
Oh, okay.
Otherwise
Yeah,
I'll
so you're
forget.
finished.
I did take them over 3 times when I thought she was still there and they wouldn't hold them for her.
No, they wouldn't.
So
I tried
thought
that
was
too.
like,
Yeah,
he said,
yeah.
no, they're sorry, they don't have anywhere to do that, but I did try.
yeah, thank you.
So is there any plant I could think of to give you and you wouldn't know anything about it? You'd have to look it up.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, like,
Totally there would be. I mean, there's a ton of things. I don't
your
know.
knowledge is like
Do you know,
fast.
you know how to do that on your phone, right? When you don't know the name of a plant? No, it just gets easier and easier. It's so exciting. Just to take a picture and then I don't know, there's different ways, but Google or whatever, now you just press a button and another button. and
Yeah,
It
there's,
tells you like it might be this or that or.
and it might not.
Then it
So
might
good
not.
To know.
Yeah, some seem more accurate because
Yeah.
we were testing as we came.
And some of the AI ones are just ludicrous and they lie through their teeth. So I actually, what I was doing is sort of query, like to sort of see what that AI stuff did. And I said, the plum hasn't set fruit in 3 years. Do I need to plant something for more pollinators? And it was like, no, you don't need to plant any bees at all. It's self-pollinating. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting.
Now, that's the other thing that came up. Somebody said something. Would the native bees be out first
Oh, yeah.
or the mason, but it's too early for the mason bees or?
There's so many kinds of native bees. And so,
Right.
yes, yesterday I finally started seeing some pollinators, but
Okay.
I did not see mason bees or bumbles. And,
Okay.
and often we'll see the bumbles first.
Right,
And this year I have not seen any, but it has been cold and a little windy.
yeah.
But it's getting late for that. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
okay.
where are these people? Right?
So the mason bees would still be in their straws?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. They're kind of temperature sensitive.
Sensitive.
Yeah.
That's why I ask about the Joe Pye weed, because I had it in Portland and it just goes crazy. I kept dividing it, and giving it to people, but the bumblebees just
Yeah, I like
absolutely.
it.
So I dug up some from Jerry,
Uh-huh.
and I don't know if it'll come up or not. Is there another I think I just bought a plant in Portland. So
Oh, yeah, but all the nurseries should have
I
it.
should have it.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
usually do Little Joe, which is kind of a smaller version,
Oh, I have that too, yeah.
smaller gardens. I think there's.
I like the big one. It's so
We have the big
beautiful.
one at the library. We have a ton of it, but the Little Joe is up here on the top row,
Oh,
kind of on the,
Yeah.
toward the staircase.
okay,
And it wasn't doing much of anything, and then we mulched it, and I thought last year it did pretty good, so.
okay.
It's an amazing plant because it would just be nothing for months and months. And then all of a sudden, it just starts to grow. And the next thing you know, it's like the big fluff ball.
Yeah,
I just, one of my
so cool.
very favorite plants.
Big pollinator favorite, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.